Hey, I'm really excited to have someone that I've known for many years now, my dear friend Oscar Cruz, who I met in Vancouver, Canada, when I was living out there in Canada. And I asked Oscar to join me for today's episode. I remember just a short story that Oscar had told me many years ago about his experience leaving El Salvador and coming to North America. And his story, as he was telling me the story, reminded me of a couple books that I had read, and it was like, wow, you actually made it to North America on your own as a teenager. It's crazy. And so, Oscar, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So tell me what led you to leave El Salvador, and how old were you when you first began that journey?
Yes, I was not a teenager. I was already 26 years old, and I had just finished my teaching training, and then I had already worked as a elementary school teacher for a number of years. My second training was for high school teaching, and I discovered that I was not wanted in El Salvador.
Hmm.
For the second time, I was told at the Ministry of Education that I was blacklisted. And a good friend of mine and teacher that I had before told me, you better leave the country because they have you blacklisted here and your life is in danger. And please leave right now because I don't want anybody to see you here.
Why were you blacklisted?
Teachers were trained in the doctrine of the pedagogy of liberation of Paulo Freire and my generation. So we were trained to teach the students to think for themselves, and the government was a dictatorship, a military dictatorship, and they didn't like that. They didn't like that we were going to go to the countryside and teach people to think for themselves and to not only read and write, but to understand what they were reading.
Hmm.
That was a challenge. And then anybody who showed promise as a teacher and definition as a teacher of the pedagogy of liberation was blacklisted. I unfortunately accepted to be a student leader during my student years. I was the president of the student association for a number of years. And in my leadership role, they spotted me. I also was invited to host a TV show for young people. And that also highlighted my position because I never really uh, hid my way of thinking on how to train young generations on their education.
So there's more to the story. You weren't just some regular teacher. I mean, you were an advocate. You were somebody who was in the public eye by being on TV. You were a student leader that was voicing independent thinking. Is that right?
That's correct, yes. And by the way, that was from my previous training. I ended up teaching in the Seventh-day Adventist school system, hiding from the government because the government wouldn't check into the private school systems.
Hmm.
And I was warned that the position that was assigned with the government was blacklisted as well. So twice my life was put in danger. And the second time was definitely you have to leave the country. And that I did with the help of some relatives to fund the trip to the north. And having relatives in the north also helped because I had somewhere to go.
So when you say the North, are you talking about America, Canada? Like where were you trying to get to?
The first goal was the United States because, and by the way, we don't call it America because America is a continent. We're all Americans.
Hmm.
We call it the United States when we talk about it. We never say America in Spanish. We say the United States.
Interesting. Thank you for that
And
correction.
and when I left, the goal was to get to the United States and to join my two brothers who were in Texas.
Okay.
Uh, but I landed in my father's place in California, and then I was free then to travel to Texas, because within the not crossing international boundaries, you can travel by plane wherever you want to go within the United States.
That's right. So tell me how you got to the United States, because I know that that has its own story behind it.
Yes, we decided that we were going to pay one of the most famous smugglers of undocumented immigrants, and then we paid this person to bring me to the United States, and it was quite an experience because I was picked up a few blocks from my home, and they recommend that nobody's picked up at home because there is danger on that. So I walked to the international uh, road, which is the Pan American Highway, and I was picked up there, but very, very close to my home, in a station wagon, a Gran Torino station wagon. If you ever saw those, they had used it to the maximum. It was a 14 people capacity station wagon.
Wow.
The trunk converted into another seat, and they used every single seat. And we were 14 people in that car,
14 people in a station wagon.
in a station wagon. And we
Wow.
traveled through Guatemala was easy. We have visas to go to Mexico. They arranged that to have a visa to go to Mexico. And we travel by land all the way to the city of Mexico. Several days. I remember sleeping in Chiapas, in Tuxtla Gutierrez, and then continuing travel. And it was nighttime when we traveled through the south, the Gulf Coast of Mexico.
Mhm.
Impressive highways that we've never seen in El Salvador. Mexico has incredible highways. And then we got to Mexico City at night, and we were put up in hotels, different hotels. Unfortunately, the room that was assigned to me and another man, we couldn't sleep in the bed because the bed was wet,
You're kidding
wet
me.
from the previous occupants.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
we decided to sit on the couch and sleep sitting down, and then we were flown to Tijuana. Um, very simply put in an airplane and landed in Tijuana. And there were several incidents that threatened us, but we continued on. By this time, it's already, I left El Salvador on a Thursday morning, and but by this time it's already Monday night. We were transported by land to the border in Tijuana. And we were shown what the border was. It was just, there were no walls, was a post with a cable running on top
Mm.
of them. You could jump on the cable, over the cable, you can run underneath it. Uh,
Mhm.
there were no walls in those days in Tijuana, between Mexicali and San Diego and the rest of Tijuana and the United States. So we were told at 11 at night um, to run. They were calculating that the helicopter had gone just by, checking the border. And as soon as the helicopter was going, we ran across the border, and they never let us stop until 3 in the morning. So from 11 at night until 3 in the morning, we were running in fields, plowed fields, different grass fields, and very wet and cold. It was January. Was it January? Yes. It was cold, very cold. Never experienced in my life a
Mm.
place that cold. And then we were asked to hide under some bushes, and they said you'll find there something to wrap yourself with. And it was a bunch of filthy blankets and mattresses that they put in there for people to sit down on the mattresses, dusty mattresses.
And where was this, Oscar? Was this were these blankets and mattresses in a field or in a house or a building?
No, they were in a not a field, but it was sort of a brook, a creek
Mm-hmm.
on the edge of the field. There were these bushes that looked like rhododendrons, kind of that
Mm-hmm.
size of bush, that sort of make an umbrella and cover you. And we were there, and we discovered that it was so cold. One of the men said, we're gonna have to lose any inhibitions here, and we're gonna have to bundle together to warm each other up with our bodies.
Mm.
And we did that. And we were switching to inside the bundle of about 45 people, the ones that were cold outside, to keep warm through the night. At this point, the people who brought us there had disappeared. I noticed that they had backpacks, sort of square-looking backpacks. I imagine they were smuggling other things, not just people.
Now, when you say the people that brought you there, are you talking about the people that drove the station wagon?
Oh, no, we were, at this point, we had changed hands in Mexico City.
Mm-hmm.
Different people took us to Tijuana.
Okay.
And Tijuana was a different group of people who drove us to the border. And when we ran into the border and crossed the border and ran into the bushes to protect ourselves, was a different group of people.
Mm.
They sell immigrants or migrants from group to group. The money you pay at the beginning is just split along the way amongst all the people that will get involved with you,
Okay.
with your transportation. So we were there for a night, a whole day, and at night, around 10 at night, another group of men came and said, we're gonna continue now. And we were walked down to the creek. I noticed that it was particularly stinky. It smelled really bad.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, walk on the side of the creek because those are not, that's sewer water.
Mm.
And then we entered the tunnel of sewer tunnels of the city of, I don't know, San Diego, I think. We walked in those tunnels for a number of hours. They're long. You only see a little clear dot at the end.
Mm.
And that's where the opening is. And then that's the beginning of another tunnel.
Mm.
So by 7 at night, the following day, we are popping out of a manhole in the middle of a townhouse complex. People were having supper and they looked at us coming out of the manhole, and apparently they are involved in the traffic of immigrants because they didn't stand up to check or phone anybody, or they just saw us. And then we were arranged into a cargo van, 4 people planks, 4 people planks, 4 people planks, then a bunch of burlap sacks on top to cover the whole thing.
So when you're in the cargo van, you guys are laying flat on your back?
Flat, yeah.
Okay.
So I was on the edge of the cargo van, and there is this pinhole, hundreds of holes for air to go through.
Mm-hmm.
From the outside, it's impossible to see them, but from the inside, you see the light coming in through the pinholes.
Mm.
And then in that van, I remember going quite a distance, but to my surprise, there is another toll booth or checkpoint way inside the United States. Now I know that it's called San Isidro, which is an inside the continental United States checkpoint, immigration checkpoint. The driver got out of the van and he had a bundle of, like, I mean, in my life, I have never seen that much money. And he had that bundle of American dollars, United States dollars. And he handed them over to a very tall, white, looking to me, a immigration officer.
Mm.
And the man put that money in the back of his pants and covered it with his jacket and let us go.
Mm.
So even in the system of control, there is people who are profiting from the immigration movement.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
that was not a Latino or a Mexican or however you want to describe a brown person. It was a Caucasian man, very tall, speaking English to the driver. And he handed over the money and he just put it in the back of his pants
Mm.
and said, bye, see you next time.
Mm.
So at the end of that, wow, it's funny how everything comes to you when you try to remember. We went to a holding house. I noticed that the upstairs was already full of people. So we were sent downstairs to the basement. We must have been at least 100 people in the basement.
Wow.
And they sell you food in that house, very expensive. It's $20 a meal. And many of
Mm.
us didn't have money to buy that meal because we had already given up all the money we had. And from that holding place, they take you to different places. I ended up in the house of the brother of the man that I contacted in El Salvador. And they called my father from that house. And I heard people say Echo Park when they were calling my father to go to Echo Park. And later on, I discovered where that house was. Driving around in Los Angeles, I told Gloria, we gotta go check this place. And I saw the house where they
Mm.
took me, and we had paid already. I mean, I was making in American dollars probably 140 American dollars a month as teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And I paid this man $1,800.
Wow.
So many, many, many months of work.
Yeah.
But once I landed in the hands of this other man who was brothers with the first man I paid to, he told my father that I still owe $500 to him,
Mm.
that I had to pay that money to be released. So my father and my stepmother put the money together and got me out of there.
So, Oscar, before you left El Salvador, what were you allowed to take with you? I mean, did you have a bag? Did you have personal belongings? Did you have cash with you for the trip?
I did have a little bit of cash, but it didn't last very long. In the first part of the trip, they fed us, so I wasn't using my money. They tell you not to bring any extra clothing. What they tell you is to put 3, 4 pairs of underwear so you can throw away the ones close to your body
Mm-hmm.
along the way, and to wear very sturdy pants. And something that they tell you is don't wear anything that identifies the country of your origin, because if they catch you, they will send you back all the way to your country of origin. But if they don't know where you came from, they will just drop you off in Mexico.
Mm.
And we can pick you up from there and do it again. I forgot that I was wearing a pair of sneakers that are very unique to El Salvador,
Mm-hmm.
from a factory in El Salvador. And I only noticed that I was wearing those sneakers because the footprint that I left on the mud in the fields was exactly the name of the sneakers. So they would have known that I was coming from El Salvador. But I was fortunate to make it all the way to meet my father And in a couple of weeks, they sent me over to Texas to join my brothers and get a job and work. And then start trying to get status, see if I could get status.
And how did you do that? Because you're according to the United States an illegal alien. You don't have access to health insurance. You don't have documentation to get a job. You don't have a social security number. So what do you do to start getting all that stuff together?
Interestingly, no, this is 1986. I was given a social security number and I was deducted taxes on my pay. So it was legal employment and it was a legal social security number. Had my name on it. I don't understand how that happened. The opportunity for Salvadorians, because it was the middle of the war, was to claim political or refugee as a
asylum,
war-torn country refugee. In my case, I was claiming political asylum because my life was threatened by political reasons, for political reasons. And the way to do it is that you hire a lawyer, very expensive lawyer. And I was working to pay that lawyer every time I saw him $400. To see him was $400. And then I had to pay for other fees that the government charges to process your application. I only did that after Gloria joined me 3 months later with my older daughter, who was only 3 years old when she came to North America.
So let's before we get Gloria's story as part of this, let me just go back to the lawyers. When you got to Texas and joined your brothers, what kind of work were you doing to try to get that $400 to pay for the lawyers?
Not only that, first to get the money to bring my wife and daughter, which was another uphill. But now I was in the country where they make the money, right?
Right.
So I didn't have to work for Salvadorian colones. I was working for American dollars, and I could put the money together sooner. There is all kinds of stories of kindness that I found along the way. My brothers were working for a man who was a supervisor with a chain of cafeterias called Luby's Cafeterias. And then he decided to open up his own business. And he brought my two brothers with him from Luby's to work with him. Although I was better educated than my siblings, English was a challenge at the beginning. So my destination was the dish pit.
Okay.
I was washing pots and dishes, and then I had to work extra hours to make more money to put together the money that I needed for my wife and daughter. But my employer, who was a very kind man, would ask me every week, so how much do you have saved up? And how much do you need to have? And when I told him once, Richard, I have such amount of money, and how much else do you need? And I said, well, I need another $800. He reached into his pocket and he gave me the $800.
Wow.
And he simply said, bring your wife and daughter. And I will never forget that. And I said, I will pay you back. And he says, I'm not asking you to pay me back. This is what I want to do for you.
Wow. So the graciousness and kindness of people along the way.
Oh, incredible, incredible. In that little house in Tijuana, before we crossed the border, they were serving food to people who could pay. And simple food, really nice, simple Mexican food. and the lady of the house says, everybody ate already? And somebody says, well, that group there, they didn't eat because the federal Mexican police stole our money in Tijuana in exchange to return a 13-year-old girl to the group unharmed. They took our watches, jewelry, money, whatever we had. And so we had no money. And she says, well, I said, we don't have any money to pay for your food. She says, I'm not asking if you had money, I'm asking if you ate already. And I said, no, we haven't eaten. And she says, well, come and eat. As it turns out, she charged people who could pay first, and then fed everybody else who couldn't pay. So in the middle of a bad world, there's good people. There's good people. And I met them along the way. I met them all. Very
beautiful. That's beautiful.